Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. Dave Thompson was the epitome of a despicable landlord. Honestly, referring to him as a human feels like a stretch. Over the past 4 years, he subjected me to a relentless barrage of mistreatment and harassment. Let me give you a glimpse into the hell he put me through. The bastard had the audacity to steal my dryer and other shared household items from the common area. To make matters worse, he forced me to cover the cost of a plumbing repair that was later deemed normal wear and tear. But that's not all. The sleazy jerk even attempted to break into my apartment on multiple occasions. Apparently, seeking legal counsel was a grave offense in his eyes. After I consulted my lawyer following his threatening letter about a parking spot dispute, he retaliated by trying to slap me with an outrageous $150 monthly surcharge. Now let me be clear. I never missed a single rent payment in those 4 years, except for that one time when he made me foot the bill for the plumbing fiasco. Even then, I was only a couple of days late. The list of his offenses goes on and on. Trust me, this apartment was a far cry from nice. It turned out the plumbing was illegal. He left me with a decrepit porch that posed severe safety hazards for years. The ceiling paint was constantly peeling off, and the gas heater was a code violation waiting to happen. Finally, after enduring 4 years of torment, I saw my chance to escape when that scumbag tried to hike my rent by a whopping $500 a month. The guy would stop at nothing to squeeze every last penny out of his tenants. 4 days before my departure, I decided it was time for sweet revenge. I called the building inspector and spilled the beans. The porch he had recently replaced lacked the necessary permits and was a shoddy, code-violating mess. I laid it all out, the illegal plumbing, the hazardous heater, you name it. The inspector wasted no time and showed up the very next day, taking meticulous measurements. I heard each violation carried a $500 daily fine until rectified. While I don't know the exact outcome, the thought of finally giving that scumbag a taste of his own medicine was immensely satisfying. He was, at the very least, on the town's radar now. A week before I moved out, the jerk tried to dictate a specific move-out time. I ignored his nonsense because where I lived, that's not how things worked. He even had the audacity to threaten me with police involvement if I didn't comply. Well, I took preemptive action and paid a visit to the cops myself that morning, briefing them on the situation. True to form, that lowlife showed up hurling threats and harassment my way. I didn't hesitate to call the police, who promptly informed him that I was well within my rights. Here's where things took a twisted turn. While I was out moving my belongings to a storage unit, the scumbag broke into my apartment and nailed the door shut. Fed up with his antics, I demanded the supervisor's presence when the cops arrived, as I was done being harassed by this guy. Unsurprisingly, he scurried off before the supervisor could arrive, likely aware that he'd be arrested on the spot. I secured a police report, and they're slapping him with a felony charge for breaking and entering. Fines and criminal charges? That's the price you pay for being a colossal jerk to decent people. The next one is an entitled people story. When my wife and I bought our little farmhouse out in the countryside, I thought we were living the dream. After years of living in cramped city apartments, having a few acres of land with a cozy house was heaven. I looked forward to lazy weekends spent on the porch, watching the sunrise with a cup of coffee in hand. That dream turned into a nightmare pretty quick thanks to our neighbor Ron. He lived in the only other house for miles, an old rundown shack that clearly hadn't been maintained in decades. Ron was the epitome of a grumpy old man, always complaining about something and generally unpleasant to be around. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt at first, but that went out the window fast. It started small. I'd notice an empty soda can or candy wrapper near the edge of my property where it bordered Ron's land. Annoying, but no big deal. Then I started finding full garbage bags dumped along the fence line. I couldn't prove it was Ron, but considering we were the only 2 houses around, it wasn't hard to figure out. Still, I picked up the trash and hoped that would be the end of it. Of course, with my luck, that was wishful thinking. Over the next few weeks, the amount of garbage steadily increased. It was clear Ron had decided my land was his personal dumping ground. I found broken furniture, old car parts, even disgusting things like dirty diapers just thrown about willy-nilly. The final straw came when I found several large oil drums leaking toxic sludge all over my once pristine meadow. Enough was enough. I marched over to Ron's place and pounded on his door until he answered, looking irritated. Before he could even open his mouth, I let loose. Don't even try to deny it, Ron. I know you've been using my property as your own personal landfill. It stops right now, do you hear me? I've had it with your disrespect and laziness. Dispose of your trash properly from now on or you'll regret it, that's a promise. Ron just glared and told me to get off his land. Ain't my problem what ends up on your side. Not my responsibility. Maybe you should build a fence or something if you don't like it. He then slammed the door in my face. That was the last straw. Nobody treats me that way, especially on my own land. I decided then and there to hit Ron where it hurt, his wallet. After consulting with a lawyer buddy of mine, I sent Ron an official notice that I would be suing him for illegal dumping and property damage if he didn't cease immediately. I outlined all applicable laws and penalties, making it clear I meant business. At first, Ron ignored the notice. The very next day, I found even more garbage strewn about. However, this time I had a plan. I set up trail cameras all along the property line, carefully hidden among the trees. Over the next week, I compiled undeniable video evidence of Ron sneaking onto my land at night to dump his trash. Armed with proof, I forwarded the videos and photographs to my lawyer along with an estimate of cleanup costs and property damage. We immediately filed a lawsuit against Ron, seeking damages and an injunction prohibiting him from coming onto my land. The look on Ron's face when he got served the lawsuit papers was priceless. He turned purple with rage, crumpling up the documents and throwing them on the ground. Later that day, I witnessed him hastily dragging bag after bag of trash back onto his own property. He was muttering curse words the whole time. As expected, Ron didn't even bother responding to the lawsuit. My lawyer filed for a default judgment. The judge reviewed the ample evidence against Ron and not only awarded me damages, but also granted a permanent injunction keeping Ron off my property. I wish I could say Ron learned his lesson and changed his ways, but some people are just committed to being jerks. He still shoots me dirty looks whenever we cross paths and has taken to accidentally letting his chickens wander onto my land. But at least he doesn't dare dump any more trash or set foot on my property unless he wants to be hauled back to court. The money I was awarded in the lawsuit more than covered the costs of clearing away all the junk Ron had dumped over the months. I had a big bonfire and burned all the usable debris. Talk about cathartic. The tainted soil from the oil spill took a bit more work to remediate, but thankfully I didn't have to pay a dime thanks to Ron being forced to cover the expenses. While having a courthouse battle wasn't exactly how I envisioned spending my time out here in the country, the justice felt oh so sweet, and I take comfort knowing that if Ron tries anything else, I won't hesitate to hit him again where it hurts, his wallet and his freedom. This city boy learned the hard way that country folks don't mess around when it comes to defending their land. The next one is a petty revenge story. This isn't anything spectacular, but I figure some will get a kick out of it. It has been long enough I might be remembering certain things wrong, but the overall story is true. So this was back in 2002/2003-ish. I was somewhat addicted to the MMORPG RuneScape. I had a lot of friends, but there was one friend in particular that I played with a lot. We were both fairly invested in the game and were in the top 2,000 on the leaderboards at the time. We both had well-developed accounts worth enough that I was offered $5,000 for my account once. I suspect it was a scam attempt, but it gives a vague idea of what our efforts might have been worth if we'd decided to sell our accounts. One morning, I log into I think it was MSN Messenger that we talked on most of the time, and my friend is very upset as his main account was hacked into. Weak password keylogger, someone he trusted betrayed him. I don't know. However it happened, he couldn't get in. Worse, the person who did it managed to get his contact information and was taunting him over chat, threatening him and trying to blackmail him. I was enraged, and after about 2 hours of convincing, he finally agreed to give me the contact info of this person so I could talk to them. I'm no tech genius, but I know a few tricks my friend didn't and was too upset to learn at the time. I don't remember if it was from RuneScape or MSN, but I got the person's IP address, and the Hoy's tool to look up IP addresses was something I'd used a few times. So while I start laying into this person, I'm also looking them up. I know there's only so much information I can get, but it's worth a try. It's very quickly clear I'm speaking to a kid, maybe 10 at the very youngest, more likely 14, 16 range. And he's so cocky it was unbelievable. Just before Whois spits out his details, he says his dad is a cop and he's immune to anything. But then, Whois gives me a police department in a town in California as the source of the address. I'd never seen so specific information before, but I wasn't about to question it. I'd expected to get the region and use that, but now I had a golden ticket to victory. It took all of 30 seconds before the kid was totally freaking out and begging me not to call his dad as I rattled out his hometown and where his dad worked. I couldn't just call his dad even knowing the police department location, no long distance on my phone at the time, but he didn't know that. An hour later, my friend had his account back, with bonus gifts. The kid was transferring items and gold around and all my friend's gold was gone, but I guess my timing was awesome because there was 10x the value of the missing gold and items that he gained in exchange. My friend and I played for another year or two before moving on. The next one is a malicious compliance story. So this happened 20 plus years ago and it still makes me laugh. I'm an Australian radiographer who was working in the UK NHS. There was this older radiographer, Susie, who told me she hated locum radiographers and particularly hated Australians. Sadly, I was guilty of both. Susie generally tried to make my life hard, but regularly failed to succeed. All the staff liked me, and I thoroughly enjoyed the work and the people I worked with. Susie also did her best to avoid doing any activity at all. She was disliked by nearly all in radiology, including the supervisor. One Friday afternoon at a work meeting, the supervisor radiographer informed us all that a new pain clinic service would start Monday in the operating theaters, and a radiographer was required to go for 6 hours each Monday. Now, most radiographers I know are not overjoyed at doing theater work. You stand around in a lead gown for hours pressing a button occasionally. Some love it, but I think it's okay sometimes. Susie quickly yells out, "I'm definitely not doing that, make the Aussie go. He is getting paid enough." Everyone stopped and looked at me, and I just said, sure, no dramas. Come Monday, I attended theater at 9 a.m. and met the loveliest pain specialist and his nurse. They made the whole day great. Here is the thing, but I would do a case, and then the pain specialist would say he didn't need me for the next case, and could I go to the tea room and wait? I actually spent most of the day in the operating theater tea room eating biscuits, drinking tea, and reading the newspapers. I would generally come down from theater about 2 p.m., where I would be met by the supervisor radiographer who would tell to take my lunch hour plus my morning tea break. I would return about 3:30 p.m. just in time for my afternoon tea break, then actually do some work from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Meanwhile, Susie has been assigned to the general X-ray department doing ward work, slogging away all day. This went on for months until I moved on. The last week I was there, the supervisor radiographer sent another radiographer to theater for pain clinic, and it was discovered what my working life on a Mondays had entailed. Susie was livid and demanded she should go to pain clinic, but the supervisor reminded her she had refused previously. P's sorry for any grammar, etc. on a phone with fat fingers. The next one is an entitled people story. My 39F older brother, 42M, has always felt the world owes him something. I'll keep this as short as I can, but it's a doozy. We'll call my brother Twat for our story. Twat started selling drugs in middle school. By age 18, he got caught with 50-plus G-meth, 1 PD weed, 100-plus painkillers, and a gun. This was before the recession in 2008, and my parents were doing well, although my mom, an RN, had recently undergone major surgeries on her neck and back, forcing to retire 1 year before she could collect pension. Twat fully expected and got my parents to pay for the best attorney around. The retainer fee alone was $2,000. Twat by this time was 19 years old and was sentenced to 3 months in boot camp that was usually only for people under 17 despite facing 50 years in prison. It turned out that ATF worked to the judge to give him a light sentence so they could use him as bait to get to the rest of his gang. When he was released, I told my parents he has a major meth heroin addiction and needs help. They refused to see that their only son could do this. Twat started using and selling hard drugs, meth, coke, heroin, the works, literally the day after his release. I saw it with my own eyes. The feds built a case on him for 2 years before surrounding my parents' house and arresting Twat again, this time for trafficking meth, heroin, weed, conspiracy on all of these counts, and felony gun possession. We lived on the border of 2 states, which is why it was a federal crime and was considered trafficking. They arrested 4 other members of his gang at the same time, all in collecting over $2 million, 150-plus firearms, nearly 1,000 Gs of meth, about the same in heroin, and a lot of weed. I don't know how much. Twat was facing 90-plus years. This was after the recession. Dad lost his business in 2009, and Mom was not working. They ended up filing for bankruptcy that year. So, to bond Twat out, they put their home up as collateral. Do you think Twat intended to show up for court? No. Twat determined he was going to flee to Mexico and let my parents lose their home and be out on the street. While he was out, he still sold drugs and would borrow money from my parents using any excuse under the sun. One of the times, he borrowed $500 my mom pulled out of her retirement. Twat showed up at their house showing off his shiny new drone. He had 3. My mom mentioned the $500 and Twat lost his crap, yelling that she was a selfish idiot and that he doesn't have a ducking mother. That if she loved him, she would find the money to pay for an attorney for him. My parents couldn't afford one this time around, and he had a public defender. My mother has broken her back for us kids over the years, and would have gladly served Twat's sentence for him if they'd let her. His words cut through he so deeply she still bears the scars. I had moved to a different city than my parents by this time. About a week before his court date, Twat had the audacity to show up at my house and demand I let him stay there. It was one of the hardest decisions of my life, BC. At the time, I loved my brother, but I called the feds and told them where he was. At the end of the day, I couldn't stand the thought of my blameless parents being homeless due to Twat's actions. I started hating him for the position he put me in and the decision he forced on me to betray either him or my parents. The next one is an entitled Parent Story. So for some backstory, basically, my mom and stepdad hate games and all of that and are absolute control freaks, and I play games just to talk to friends I can't see much. Now, what took place recently is that out of the blue one day, they decided to take me to a neurologist even though I had lectures, and they told me the college wanted me to go to there, even though I didn't buy the story at all. And then when we got there, I asked, why is the college making me do this again? And they said they didn't at all make me go here, and that's when I knew something was up, since the info they were telling me was going against one another. And I said, I thought the college told me to go here. And then the neurologist walked in and called for me, and after doing some tests and everything, it turns out it was all about my screens the whole time, even though I'm hardly even on them. And next thing I know, I'm having everything taken, and then next thing I know, I can't see my friends for 2 months, and then I get my stuff back, and I'm getting my Wi-Fi, which I pay for, being restricted along with my TV being restricted by a weird wood box thing that the TV cord leads to, and I figure out that the box controls the power to the TV, and the only way I can get the TV cord out of the box is with a Phillips head screwdriver, which I don't have. And I don't live on campus, since I just don't like how small it is in the dorms. So I live at home for now, but when I get back from college for the weekend, I notice all my electronics except for my phone and laptop are missing, since I had my phone and laptop with me. And I go to ask where the hell my stuff is, and they tell me to look in the office, and there's my stuff all plugged in, and I ask why the hell my stuff was moved, and they say, because I was on it last night, even though I definitely wasn't for a fact. And I say bullcrap, and they can even check my profile on Steam to see when I was last on, since I have 2 accounts I play on, and I was on one the other day. And they said I was lying, and that my stuff isn't going back in my room no matter what, so now I can't even have any privacy anymore, it seems. I hate my parents. The next one is an entitled Parent Story. I remember when it was my brother's graduation, and my mom insisted that I attend family events. I had just finished freshman and gained 20 pounds from depression and isolation. I thought about transferring colleges and giving up my scholarship because that's how much I hated my college. Nevertheless, I attended his graduation because my mom insisted. I stayed at his place with him for a week before my mom joined us from another country. I had started shedding a lot of hair from stress and depression, but had no idea. Since I was sharing space with him, I had little space to put my belongings. My hair shredded in the bathroom, but I didn't notice it, and it happened for a couple of days where my hair sat in the bathroom. Without warning, my brother aggressively pushed me to the ground and started yelling why I didn't clean up. He also screamed again because I spread her 2 books, a laptop, and snacks on his desk to work on my transfer essays. He kept pointing out my thighs and laughed. The whole graduation trip I came for my brother turned into emotional scapegoating. I told my mom about this, but she shrugged and said his place his rules. I failed my college transfer, was externally exhausted, and suffered 4 years of college. Fast forward 10 years and he got married. My brother and I were not in good terms and had stopped talking. I have my own apartment and always avoided family problems when my mom visited me. She brought with her my brother's wife because she was working in my neighborhood and decided to tag her along. I told my mom in the lobby I don't welcome her, but she brushed off and said, "Come on, she's just family." My mom kept pushing to let her and the wife in, and I had to push them back away from the door, and I finally snapped. My whole family started mocking me after this incident. My brother even said he's going to name his child after me, and they all started laughing. They have no respect for me and my physical boundaries at my own apartment, including my mom. What happened to her house, her rules? My mom just shrugged again and said, "Oh, don't you worry, she doesn't even want to come to your house. What the duck is wrong with her?" Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already.